A fuel choice that even rivals can agree on? Now that's worth the hype. Cheaper, cleaner, and homegrown. Pump it up with unleaded 88.
Scott Dochterman, Chad Leistikow, together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners, exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to Game Week. Welcome to episode 56 of Legends and Listeners here on Iowa Everywhere from the Channel Seed Studios. I am Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, joined by the Athletics' Scott Dochterman. We're going to talk about a piece that posted this morning from Scott that's pretty interesting. But obviously, the big discussion this week for us is the start of the Big Ten Conference season, which obviously does start tonight. But for the Hawkeyes, starts Saturday against Illinois State. I don't know, Scott, one of the most highly anticipated Iowa seasons in a while. I don't know. Is that fair to say?
It's hard. That one's hard to quantify, Chad, because they're all that way. I would say that there's a lot of interest. The expectations are high. This is the third straight year that all the games have been sold out, in third or fourth straight year that all the games have been sold out. So I think it's, they've been anticipated, but I think the difference is here, Chad, is expectations are now higher than they've been for a few years. I think everybody's expected Iowa to be good, but this year there's an expectation, and I don't know. Do you think it's playoffs or bust? I mean, I'm kind of thinking that that's along those lines, that if you don't make the playoff, if you're going to the Citrus Bowl for the third time in 4 years, it's not gonna go over as well as you think.
I don't know. Like, I always feel like you have to kind of see it play out to say that for sure. Like, I mean, that's a lot to ask to be in basically the top three of the Big Ten, an 18-team Big Ten, maybe four. I mean, I don't think five are going to get in, right?
No.
So you're saying you got to be in the top four of the Big Ten. I mean, that's out of 18 teams, or bust. Man, that's a lot. I haven't thought about it as playoffs or bust. I mean, to me, you just kind of got to see it play out. I think playoff contention or bust. I think for sure for me. I think if they're, 7-4 going into that Nebraska game, that's going to be a big deflation for the season. It could be worse than that, but I think as long as they're in contention for a while, that's a starting point for me. You just don't want it to start 2-3, which is certainly feasible, and just sort of have the season a little bit. You're playing for that Outback Bowl or whatever, or ReliaQuest Bowl, whatever it is. You don't want that.
No, you don't want that, and that's why we're standing here now with. You mentioned the most anticipated season. It goes hand in hand with expectations, and I do think it's playoffs or bust. And I think based on they have one of the best defenses in the country. They've got a veteran offensive line with 151 career starts. You've got a tight end that's one of the best in the country, and you got a plethora of running backs who are collectively pretty good. So and then you look at the schedule combined with the experience. And I would say right now, you put all the chips on the table. You've got to push them to the middle. It's time to kind of put it all together. And yeah, if there's injuries the way that happened last year, that's something that you can justify after the fact. But I think going into this season, Chad, if they don't put themselves in a position where, say, they're 10-2, like they were last year, but a better 10-2, then I think it's going to be a real difficult way for them to say. I think that then all of a sudden it pushes all those questions and brings them to the forefront of how much longer is Kirk going to be here? Can they have a bunch of changeover next year? I mean, all those questions rise to the surface.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad you're being bold on that. I think that's, I applaud you for that. one thing I'm starting to think more about is like everyone's talking about this schedule being good for Iowa. To get to I've almost come around to the other side of thinking that it's not good for Iowa because you almost outside of Ohio State, you don't necessarily have those like big recovery opportunities. For example, like if you do start 2-2 or 3-2, like you almost would love to have like an at Penn State in some ways, like week 10 or something, where this team gains momentum, picks up steam, maybe plays its way into the playoff like that. But I just don't. I'm already starting to think about this playoff conversation and be like, if I was like in contention and they've got, let's say Nebraska's 6-5, right about where they've been or a little better. I think they'll be better than that, but maybe not. And Maryland's just sort of meh, like those are your last couple games. Like, how is that? If you're trying to get like basically the other Big Ten at large, other than the championship contenders, like, I don't know. I'm just sort of like setting the stage for the season. Like, playoff or bust could be. It kind of depends on what happens in other games too. So I don't know, but it is a playoff capable team. I will say that.
Right. I think with the schedule is that there are better games than people think at the immediate. And I think automatically what happens is fans immediately dismiss their rivals who they beat in the previous year. Like they're not quality opponents. And I look at like Wisconsin, for instance. Yeah, they've struggled the last couple of years. They've been the last 4 to 5, they've really kind of been mediocre. I think they're going to be a lot better. And you come into Kinnick Stadium, there just seems to be this. And I think Wisconsin fans were exactly the same way the previous decade, where it's almost like, oh yeah, they'll get past them. If the game's at home, it'll happen. Same thing with Nebraska, and I think both of those teams are going to be much improved. And when you look at how close those games are, I mean, Iowa was the most dominant team against Wisconsin, but it's still, it required an 82-yard touchdown run to really put that game in control for Iowa. And, Nebraska, it was a really bad play by the quarterback and ends up, with a miracle, 3-pointer at the end at the buzzer to win the game. And so I guess I like the way the schedule plays out for Iowa from this standpoint, that they are playing some rivals. And they do have one humongous litmus test, and their rivals are competitive. Iowa State being very good, Wisconsin being very good. I think Nebraska is on the rise. And I also think that Minnesota, while I don't know that they're going to be good, I think they're going to be very competitive, and they've got competitive players. So I like the way the schedule sets up for Iowa. I think you had them, 9-3? I have them at my prediction's 10-2. I think they lose to Ohio State and Wisconsin. But I think they tie for second place, a three-way tie for second.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a pretty good season for sure. I mean, it's just I guess that's where I'm like still we'll see on the schedule, because I agree that those games are going to be tougher. But when it comes to like, when we get to November and everyone's arguing about teams, well, Iowa didn't play anybody. Mm-hmm. You're going to hear that even if they're 10-2. Like you're just because all they did was beat Iowa State, and all they did was beat Wisconsin, and all they did was win at Minnesota. Big whoop, But we know how hard that is. That's not easy. And I actually think tonight's game in Minnesota, North Carolina, is just one of those games where if you're the Hawks, you want Minnesota to win. You want the Big Ten you want a win at Minnesota to be tough, right? Mm-hmm. So it starts tonight.
Absolutely. You got to be in the unenviable situation of kind of rooting for your rivals.
Yeah, same with Iowa State. Same with Iowa State,
especially Iowa State, because that game to me is somewhat of a coin flip. But I think if Iowa State goes on and let's say they win the Big 12, all it does is help you out. Mm-hmm. And if you're 10-2 and there are 5 teams for 3 spots, but Iowa State's already in, and you beat Iowa State, or if you lost to Iowa State, either one,
that's huge.
It's like it makes your case stronger that, hey, we played 9 conference games. The SEC only plays 8. We played 10 Power 5 opponent or Power 4 opponents, including the champion of the Big 12 and the champion of the Big 10, conceding it to Ohio State at this point. and so you look at that and you go, okay, well, we're in good shape. That you feel like you can make that case. And then it's like, like what I have, three-way tie at 10-2, 7-2 in the league would be Penn State, Iowa, Oregon, tied for second. Then Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nebraska and Rutgers all at 8-4 overall. So I think there's this, if you take care of your business and go 10-2 and you look good enough doing it, you can justify it. But I guess I look at it from the perspective of there are years when we cover this team, Chad, we know when they are. The years where this team is capable of reaching a high level. And you want to maximize it. And unfortunately for Iowa, a lot of times is the year that they go 7-5 when you think they can go 11-1. and this is certainly one of them. And I kind of go back to that, will they, the field goal against Nebraska, it comes back the other way. Will Wisconsin have the safety in the 82-yard run? Will, Iowa State, have the pick six? I mean, those are things that come through your mind. Will Northwestern do Northwestern things against Iowa? But that said, I'm pretty bullish on this team. I think if quarterback can be consistent and efficient, I think this team's going to be in the playoff chase the entire season.
Great segue into what we're going to talk about next. Just my final point there is, of all the years that you want to root for you don't want to root for Iowa's rivals. Like, I know you never do. But like of all the years, because of how the whole schedule sets up, just like Scott articulated there, like you may have to like deep down in your heart kind of root for Nebraska to be decent and root for Iowa, especially if you beat Iowa State, root for them to run the freaking table in the Big 12, and, for that Wisconsin win to be quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But first, we always want to give a shout to our amazing presenting sponsor of Legends and Listeners, GameDay Men's Health. Man, there is never a bad time to get yourself right. Get back in the game with GameDay Men's Health. They can help with the testosterone replacement therapy. Low T, very common in men our age and younger. But GameDay Men's Health can improve your mood, your muscle mass, your sex drive, your energy levels, just your general well-being. Get your free private, no obligation consultation today. It's super chill. Check them out at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or call one of their locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. And when you do, I was just in there Monday, and we're sending people to Game Day. I can tell you that because I hear about it all the time. But keep telling them, if you're going in there, tell them you're listening to Chad and Scott on Legends and Listeners. That helps them. That helps us. And it helps you most importantly.
Most definitely. I have to go in through the back door there because after the car crashed through the front. And
it's not that shady. It's not that shady.
No, it's not. You're not going through the back door to get some low, because you're low T. But luckily Corey, he got kind of offended by that. So I'm glad he ended up okay. And but no, it's really been a boon for us. I think it's helped us, and now I'm kind of wondering, I'm like, man, what would I be? Would I be more, frumpy if I didn't have this? But I feel pretty good now. So yeah, thanks to those at GameDay Men's Health, and hopefully we'll get a front door entrance here pretty soon.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about this opener for the Iowa Hawkeyes. We got a few more things to hit on as Big Ten wise as the show goes, but certainly a lot of you listening to this want to hear about Iowa versus Illinois State, especially what this looks like for the Hawkeyes. And Scott, you put this question in our text chat. Let's just start there. The word offense is not in this question, but I know we're going to get to that. But the question is, what do we want to see that would qualify as success on Saturday? You just articulated playoffs or bust. So to me, that sounds like expectations for you Saturday are pretty high. So how would you answer that question?
I want to see consistency on offense. I want to see them be able, it really, the first thing that we're all going to watch is passing game. It's going to be quarterback, it's going to be receiver, and it's going to be whether the line can protect them. And of course, number one overall is, how does Cade McNamara do throwing the football? There were a lot of expectations on him last year. The first pass was great, and the rest of the season wasn't as good until he got hurt. And I think what I want to see is consistency. Can he throw and hit receivers where they need to be hit? In stride, in the right area, make the right reads, do all those things. I'm not saying he needs to go 20 for 20, although if he wants to do that, that'd be great. But I think if he can go and be efficient, not make big mistakes, make the makeables in the passing game, that's what I want to see in game one. This is a different defense. It's not as good as the one that he plays against every day in practice, probably not even as good as the number 2 unit at Iowa. Illinois State is a quality team, no question, for FCS, but there is a difference. And you want to see them make the makeables in the passing game, and you want to see receivers be able to do something with the ball in their hands. That, to me, is where it starts. The rest of it, I feel pretty secure will take care of itself. But absolutely, it's passing game and efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo those sentiments. Obviously, you and I have discussed how quarterback is a concern for us until it's not. And so that's certainly a major curiosity on Saturday. So rather than repeat what you said, I will take it in a different direction here. And it's something that I wrote about that posted Thursday morning at hawkcentral.com. If you want to check it out, I'll just touch on it a little bit here. But I went back and looked at last year's season opener, Scott, and you said it. There was a lot of euphoria out of the gate because Cade McNamara threw a long touchdown to Seth Anderson on his first pass as a Hawkeye. Hawks scored on the second drive of their season as well, a touchdown, and it was a long drive. Mm-hmm. So you felt pretty good. But you look at the final box score, Scott, 284 yards net offense. And this was the big one for me, 2.4 yards per carry against Utah State. I want that latter number to be around 5 on Saturday. I think establishing the running game to me is actually more important than the passing game looking crisp. I think the pass game can get there. As Tim Lester says, it's all going to start in his offense with the run. And if they can't run the ball against Illinois State, then I don't have a lot of confidence in this season, to be honest, because we've heard how good this offensive line is. Not that it's going to be a world beater, but I think we're both on the same page. It could be akin to the 2016 line that was sort of a no-name quality line, so to speak. That's kind of what Iowa's got this year, and some veteran guys. And I would just listen to Ferentz's show last night, and we talked to this guy on Tuesday. Bo Stevens is a great example of this line, because here's a guy that played as a redshirt freshman way before his time, wasn't ready to play, but Cody Ince was hurt, right? That was the year Cody Ince got hurt, and he was supposed to be the guard, not Bo Stevens. And Bo Stevens started 10 games. It did not go great. We all remember that Illinois game over there where Spencer was just under siege up the middle.
Yeah.
I believe Johnny Newton probably had something to do with that. But, they would have won that game with good line play. Clearly. Yeah. And so that's what I'm talking about. Bo Stevens is like, now he's 2 years more mature, 6'6", 322. I mean, he looks like a guy that could be a real difference maker. That's what you need. That's what I want to see on Saturday. An offensive line that just takes care of business and just gets this offense moving in the right direction.
There was one game, I can't remember which year it was 17 or 18. They opened up with Northern Illinois, and it was, so they had Sutton Smith. He was a really good kind of outside, edge player, kind of do it all. So there were some concerns about that. I want to say it was 18 because both Tristan Wirfs and Alaric Jackson missed the opener.
It was 18. It was 18.
Yeah.
Fact check. Yep.
Okay, good. Thanks. And for that, I was, all they did was they just said, you know what, we're going to just beat you up. And that's all they did. They went up, they got out, they blew them off at the line of scrimmage, and then rambled the rest of the game. And I think that's something that's fair here. And not that I expect them to go 20 for 20 in the passing game, because everything is going to be set up by the run, and they need to establish the run, because if they can make that something where they are averaging 4.5 to 5 yards a carry, and this This game, they should be closer to 5, but across the board, if they're in the 4.5 range, they're in the discussion heavily because this offense and the way it works, that's what works best. So yeah, I also want to see some explosive plays. That seems to be something that Tim Lester talks about in frequency. He wants explosive plays, both in the run game and the pass game. Can they get Illinois State out of their run fits? Can they, hey, they want to get in a 4-minute offense. Maybe there's 3.5 minutes left of the second quarter and they're at midfield. Can they take the ball and score a touchdown and churn it out through the clock? It's not just a big couple of pass plays, but hey, let's just grind this thing up and grind them into meatballs. Go ahead and do that. So, I think that's fair, because if they can't run the ball, as you said, Chad, I mean, last year was like, oh no, here we go again.
Yeah.
After those first 2 drives, I had like an emoji or a GIF planted, Happy learned to putt, with Iowa's offense. And then it was
right.
I'm thinking I jinxed them for the whole season.
Yeah, I was looking back at that Northern Illinois box from 2018. As you were speaking there, it was a 33-7 Hawkeye win. 48 carries in that game for 209 yards on the ground with only 8 negative yards. So it was a 4.4 yards per carry. But obviously, when you get the second team offensive line in there, it brings it down a bit. Nate Stanley was only 11 for 23 for 108. Yeah. So, and that was a team that actually passed the ball pretty well that year. I mean, Stanley had a 6-touchdown pass game against Indiana. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess year before we had 5 TD pass games, but anyway, the tight ends went nuts that year, et cetera, et cetera. So the run game, that was a good sign for that 18 team, which we both agree is one of the better teams they've had.
Yeah.
Just record wise, it didn't pan out. What else are you looking for? I mean, should we talk about Kamari Moulton at this point? I mean, you talk about big plays. It seems like Tim Lester, I mean, that's my read on this. I mean, I know it's Liddell Betts' decision, I guess, ultimately, but I feel like whatever Moulton did in fall camp must have really suited Tim Lester's offense. Because he talks about those special runs that get it going, just like for the let's think about the LA Rams, for example. I mean, that outside zone, when that's clicking, that's when you start hitting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. It's been last year was Kyron Williams. They've had other great backs, Todd Gurley.
Right.
You get that right. Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco. I mean, you get those outside zones runs going. I think that's what he's probably talking about. I think that's why Moulton's probably in this discussion. And I'm excited to see how he plays.
What I was most excited about when I saw him play, I was and I remember saying it in the press box on Kids Day, was what I really like about him is his footwork, his feet, and his explosiveness through the hole. And what you could tell with him is his lower half is much bigger and stronger than it was a year ago. I mean, he was like 170 a year ago. Now he's like 195 and legit, he got it in his seat, in his legs, his thighs, and that's what you need out of that position. But he never lost quickness. He never, he's able to, once he gets to the hole, he can make guys miss. That's a rare quality. The best one that we've seen in a while was Akram Wadley. Tyler Goodson could do that a little bit too, but I think with Kamari Moulton vaulting to number 1, where you could really say that any of these 4 guys, Chad, would be a quality running back, better than we've, like the 18 team could have used any of these 4 guys and been in good shape. I mean, if they would have had Jazz Patterson, it would have been a better situation what they had. So I do like, with Kamari Moulton, he seems to have that quickness, and he's got now a little bit more power and punch and ability to absorb the contact. I think that's probably why he's in the position he is, and he could probably, unleash, a couple of longer runs on Saturday.
Well, and he's just a freshman. He got to save his year last year. He only played the 4 games. So I mean, that could be a real gift for Tim Lester. I mean, that could be another part of his thinking here. If he can make Kamari Moulton a lead back now. Now, again, there are factors here. Sean Williams was dinged
Mm-hmm.
up pretty much throughout fall camp. So Moulton got these opportunities. But obviously he jumped Caleb Johnson on the depth
Mhm.
chart, and he jumped Jazz Patterson back in the spring. So he's incrementally earned this, clearly.
Yes.
So that's very exciting. And what I also liked, and I talked about this a little bit on Hawk Central as well, but worth repeating, is like it just feels like to me that Tim Lester's fresh eyes and what he needs for this offense have really created a different looking depth chart than maybe we expected. I mean, you think about a Reese Vanderzee, for example. I mean, you couldn't have seen that coming. I mean, a true freshman from Northwest Iowa that Kirk Ferentz said he's going to play Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't think he's redshirting. So,
Right.
Jacob Gill, Northwestern transfer, complete afterthought a couple months ago. He's in the starting lineup now.
Yeah.
Caden Weechin, I mean, did any of us think he was going to be a main factor back in December, for the 2024 Hawkeyes? Probably not. And he's maybe their best playmaker receiver right now from what we're hearing. So a lot of intrigue, obviously, on offense, Scott. Anywhere you want to take that.
I really like the thought. I mean, it's kind of like this. There's the wide receiver core to me is really fascinating because it's blank. The whole sheet is blank here on this, and because Reese Vanderzee was playing baseball this summer, in Central Lyon, and Jarrett Bowie, was a redshirted last year, and Jacob Gill was at Northwestern. Terrell Washington was a running back. Caden Weejan's a walk-on. Seth Anderson's been hurt the whole time. Caleb Brown won't even play, because he'll be picking up trash or something, but, for his penance. So you've got, all these guys who are pretty athletic. They seem to think that they got something here with this unit.
Yeah, remember Kirk Ferentz said that in Indy. And that was like, I was like, oh, wow, you really like your receivers? I was like,
yeah.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
like, okay, let's see.
So, and I think the thing I like is that Lester's offense is different. Let's put it out there. It is different, and that's great, because different is better than chewing wax paper, and that's kind of where we were, a year ago with this passing game. And, and you could put people in positions. I know, to make
you're on
plays.
a roll, man. You're on a roll. Meatballs, and
I know,
the back door. Oh my God.
Yeah, let's be careful with that one. But I guess I like one thing that most people can look at objectively. Brian didn't put his receivers in the best positions to make plays. And when you had a Tyrone Tracy, the best position for him was in space and doing something. Instead, they tried to make him an X receiver, and it didn't work. And, there have been several plays. I think Arlen Bruce was the same way. And what you look at with these guys is Reese Vanderzee, he's your X guy all day long. Same thing with Jarrett Bowie. They're probably X's. The other guys, get them in motion, move them, throw swing passes. They never really threw swing passes very much. But if you can get the ball to these guys in space and let them make somebody miss, they do have quickness. Caden Weejan is very fast. He's very agile. He's very quick. Caleb Brown, we'll see that next week. I think Jacob Gill seems to be built like that, but he's also very physical. And that's something that was pointed out. I remember Mason Richmond was like, he's my favorite player because that's what he does. And that's what I like about this team is the offense, that they are putting these players in position to make plays, which I'm not so sure that they did a good job of, in the past.
So what else about this opener? We talked about what success look like. We talked all about offense right there. But I think defense is also part of this, because they had 10 total interceptions last year in 14 games, Scott. Like I want to see some takeaways this year. And I think the offense actually has a part in that, because the more pressure you put on the opponent, the more pressure you put on the opponent to make plays on the offense. They didn't have to do anything last year. We saw Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. They took no risks against Iowa, like zero.
Yeah, right.
And they beat them 26-0.
Right.
And, so you want to force the other team to take risks. And so let's see this defense, show that it is elite and not be, kind of 4 yards here, 4 yards there. Let's see him maybe take that step where it's just a shutdown defense rather than sort of a bend don't break type deal.
Right. Exactly. And I think there's a couple of core areas, Chad, that we could talk about here. Is you mentioned the takeaways. I mean, last year they were -7, which is an un-Iowa-like. I mean, you think about how bad the offense was, but then you couple that with a -7 turnover margin. And they still won 10 games. That's borderline miraculous. So I think when you want to take the ball away, I know that's something that Phil Parker has stressed and discussed since spring, ways to do it. They went to Baltimore and they went over in the spring to look over the defense and how they did things a little bit different or better. That makes a lot of sense. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you got to point to the offense too. I mean, this defense, which a stat that I keep bringing up because I think it's so damn impressive, is, they led the country in yards per play allowed, but they had 196 more snaps than number 2 Penn State. And if you're like, well, if you're Michigan and this team, it can't do anything against you. It's like in a wrestling match and that this guy doesn't have legs or something. He just can't get up. And you just lay on top of them and you win. There's no stalling. Stalling doesn't matter. Then that's what you're going to do. And that's what a lot of teams did. They didn't take unnecessary risks. You didn't see them attack Iowa down the field because they figured, well, we'll just punt it away because that's the game they're playing and we'll just play it too. And they ended up losing by a field goal, in most of those games, or the other teams did. In this situation, go up 14-0. And then what I want to see is not only taking away the ball, Chad. The one thing I want to see is pass rush. I want to see him get after the quarterback, and I want to see who can do that, and I want to see who's in their sub package to help them do that. And if they can find an edge rusher, probably in a sub package, coming off the bench, who would be, Brian Allen, of course, but even somebody like a Kenny Merriweather or whatever that can just get up the field and do something like that, I think that'll make this defense even better than what it was last year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there's one area of the defense that I'm most, I guess, intrigued to see is, those edge rushers, like who can get home this year. And Max Delon, I saw he was on the Senior Bowl watch list. I mean, the guy looks like a dude, man. Like,
he does.
Now's the time to produce. And same with Brian Allen. I mean, they got a couple guys there behind Herkett and Craig, I think, that clearly have talent. We've seen them flash it, but can they do it consistently? So, what was the year? 2 years, I guess. Epinesa was coming off the bench, but when you had that kind of production coming off the bench, or rotating in, obviously he didn't start, but getting equivalent type snaps. I mean, that's what I would love to see from this defensive end group. Deontay Craig playing 35 and Max Delon playing 29, where they're right there, in terms of quality. And so I don't know if they'll get to that point, but I'm very interested to see the defensive line depth because I feel really good about the back seven. Like I hardly have any worries about that because they actually have depth there too. You think about Cohen Entringer's coming up the pipe, Zach Lutmer, John Nestor. None of those guys are starters right now, but
Deshaun Lee,
feel great about these guys like down the line. So it's that D line for me, and punter. Can't wait to see the punter. So number 9.
Punting is winning, as we know.
Well, how many times will he punt Saturday? That'll be a good question.
That's a good over under. Like 3.5 or.
I'll go over.
I'll go over that, but 5. I don't know, something like that.
5, I think 5's good.
That's a fair number, and you want to see them. You go out there and everybody will cheer for them, and then you tweet about it, and then there'll be 2 or 3 negative Nellies. Oh, cheer for the punter. Here we go. Start it up. But no, I think that, what I want to see, because they seem to be pretty confident in 7 defensive linemen. You want to get to 8 or 9 or 10 because somebody's going to get hurt at some point. Somebody's going to, you hope for just an owie, in their terms, owie. For me, it put me in bed for 6 weeks. But, is there Luke Gaffney or Will Hubert available? Are they going to be that guy? Sam Brinks was that player. That, hey, he stepped in, and you bring up like the Epinesa era, what he was able to do was basically play some rundowns And then on third down, I mean, you talk about a package. They're still all four NFL guys, and because Parker Hesse's made the Lions.
Hesse,
Golston, Epineza, and Anthony Nelson.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Only had 23, 24 sacks in his career. So you have those four out there in a NASCAR package, with Hesse and Golston inside and the other two on the outside. I mean, that wreaks havoc on the offense. So I think if they can find somebody and be able to slide somebody in, whether that's Herkick playing inside and, bringing somebody, maybe it's Brian Allen. I don't know, but yeah. I guess we'll find out. And finally the live bullets are flying.
We haven't mentioned that Kirk Ferentz isn't going to be there in this show. We talked about him at length last week, so we're not going to dig into it too much. But any aspect that you're most curious to see on Saturday with Seth Wallace running the show?
Yeah. Tell me if I'm full of it here on this, but I think this is a really good opportunity for Seth to kind of bring his efficacy to the field. What would his mannerisms be like on the sidelines? And I'm sure he's going to be really nervous come Saturday. I mean, I'm sure once Friday starts, hey, the reality is you're going to be the acting head coach for the University of Iowa, and you're going to be walking out. And I don't think he's going to be running out on the field, like the guy I'm going to cover later tonight, but in front of the team. But I think he's, what are his mannerisms like? How does he handle himself on the sideline? I think people will definitely be watching that, because how he handles himself is the way other people will interpret him, because I think very highly of Seth. I think he is a head coach in a very short period of time, whether it's at the University of Iowa or another, institution, and how he conducts himself, not only the result, but just, I think people want to look at him and say, yeah, he's head coaching material.
Yeah. It's going to be strange. A post-game presser, Scott, without Kirk Ferentz.
Right.
I mean, does Seth Wallace come up with the notes, like a little, First off, it was great to play in Kinnick again, just kind of the talking points or whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to be funny.
Maybe it'll be faster. That's the best part.
Shorter opening statements. Yeah, it will be shorter answers, I think. Well, for the probably anyway.
Well, I just mean instead of waiting for, an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, he walks in the locker room. He's like, all right, I'm ready to go. And
that's right.
It's like basketball presser instead of a football presser.
Zooms in there. Yeah, right.
Glorious on our part. It's like, hey, the players are in the other room. But no. I think Seth's going to do a good job. And I think, and he knows it's not all on him. It's everybody. It's a working machine. It's going to be Tim Lester. What does he call that? He doesn't have to be checked by Kirk Ferentz, and 3rd and 4, from midfield, does he decide, let's just run it here and punt, or, let's go deep. Let's go hammer these guys.
Now they will talk about all that stuff in their analytics meetings. Their fourth, they talk about all this stuff on Thursdays. The coaches do. That's the players' day off. So they spend Thursday, part of the day, talking about all these situational things for the game. So I'm sure Kirk will give some marching orders, but it's not the same. You can't just articulate every single scenario. Like if it's 4th and 3 from the 44-yard line, that's a decision, and maybe, maybe you hit up Tim Lester in the headset, hey, how do you feel about this? You're like, yeah, I got a 4th down call. We're going to get the first down, Seth. Say, okay, we're going, he points, we're going. Call comes in, boom, got the headsets now, boom, boom, boom. Then they miss it, So, it's just going to be interesting to see. I hope that there are a few moments like that. I mean, if you're a Hawkeye fan, you don't want it to be too tense. You don't want it to be like a 7-7 game at halftime where, you wonder what's said in the halftime locker room or whatever. But, you kind of hope it's a little bit of a cruise control. But anyway, I think it's going to be interesting. And Kirk will be watching with Mary, he said on the show last night. So
okay. Yeah, I didn't think he'd leave his man cave.
No.
I know there's been people that have been trying to say, hey, why don't you come by my tailgate? But Kirk's the last person I can imagine being at a tailgate. I think he kind of likes his anonymity when he can have it, and that's in his own home.
Exactly.
Although I can see it's, now we can just start thinking of the Mary-isms. It's like, he's watching the game, and it's like, hey, will you come here and help me with this? And it's the trash. In the middle of the second quarter or something like that. She's vacuuming in front of him.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that situation, but we'll see. Maybe Kirk will have a glass of Steeple Ridge bourbon along, right next to him. Instead of the note card writing his penalties, he's got Steeple Ridge when Iowa commits a false start. Steeple Ridge is an awesome sponsor of Legends and Listeners and Iowa Everywhere. Steeple Ridge delivers a high-quality, delicious drinking, award-winning craft bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite retailer or grocer, ask for it by name. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. Excited for the rest of the Big Ten slate, Scott. And you had – so one of the biggest games of the Big Ten slate is tonight, and you are covering this game for The Athletic. It's North Carolina at Minnesota. It's probably one of the most intriguing Big Ten games of the week. But I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while. You spent a day with PJ Fleck. So tell us what that was like.
It's one of the more fascinating. He's one of the more fascinating people, I think, in college football. And immediately the first thought that I'm sure Iowa and Wisconsin fans come to is he's fake. He's faking this. This is all an act. And I can assure you, and I've gotten to know him a little bit over the years, but now, really spending time with him, that's not true. He is very authentic. Now, he's eccentric, quirky, and other words that people can use to describe him, but he is certainly authentic. Everything you see from him is real. He is in a meeting. I sat in on one of their meetings, and, they walk in and, they stand up and clap, and then they sit down, and then they go right to it. And the messages aren't really targeted for football. They are targeted with football in mind. But, like the day I was there, it was about the Leaning Tower of Pisa and how he was talking about how it was an architectural mistake and what the angle of the degree angle of it's wrong and all this other stuff. And then he started talking about his own about failures. And he's like, it's okay to fail. We want you to fail because that's how growth happens. And so he kind of brings into this, and what are we grateful for? What are we thankful for? And, somebody raised their hand about, they're grateful for Casey O'Brien's fight against cancer. He's now in another situation, I think number 6 or 7, but just things that go on with him there. We had long conversations about recruiting, about, the rivalry trophies, where they stayed when they came home. All just as many things. What fulfills him. And what does he look for when you're now at Minnesota in this new era? What do you shoot for? What's the goal? So there's so much there with him, and row the boat and everything. And that if we all. If you don't know, that came right after his son's death. His son died after he had a heart issue. He wasn't going to survive. He was born and died 6 hours later, and he wanted some way to honor him in his despair. And so what it came down to was, that he was at Rutgers at the time as the wide receivers coach under Greg Schiano, and they had chop, keep chopping, which was really a way to help them get through the situation with Eric LeGrand, who was paralyzed on the field. And so he came up with, hey, row the boat. And, there are 3 core areas. You have your compass, you have the boat, and, you have the people that are with you, and all these things that it really, you compartmentalize it. You can see it, and you can see his vision. And the players, I would ask, I'm like, what did you do when you saw this? I mean, what did you think? And all of them bought in. They thought, okay. And then probably the one thing that I think us old dudes can appreciate more than anything is the way he treats academics. I mean, there was a reason why this team went to a bowl game last year. They were 5-7. It was because they had the best APR in the country. And they did that because he mandates everybody is in class before it starts, 5 minutes early. No hats, no earrings, no phones taken out. Everybody wears a collared shirt and everybody sits in the first 2 rows. And, again, I saw Mo Ibrahim, the great running back. He was there at a practice, just as an observer. And I asked him about it. And he said, look, I came here, I bought in, I saw other players doing it. Then I saw how it worked for me. Instead of going in and sitting in the back and kind of, getting ready to sleep, I'm attentive. The teacher sees I'm there. I ask questions. I'm paying attention. And then I noticed that I went from a C+ to a B because I was asking questions and I got some things right because of that. And so it's okay to hate Minnesota. They hate you. They say it every time. But I think it's also okay to say, I don't like the guy, but I can respect what he does. And I think after writing this, I think a few people might come to that conclusion.
Yeah, no, the great stuff, and congratulations on getting that opportunity. That's really cool. I mean, I know that you're, you got more responsibilities than just the Iowa beat now with the Athletic, and they picked a good guy to be doing these things. Obviously,
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think I'm surprised, honestly. Like, he's still there. Like, I thought when Minnesota hired him it was before the 2017 season. I thought that this would be kind of a launching pad to who knows what, USC or somewhere, Michigan, but he's still there. So I guess he kind of had one breakthrough year. He had that 11-win season, right? 19, Iowa beat him.
Yeah, right. Iowa, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Talk about a real letdown for them, because those are the 2 teams that they care about the most in that area. And so to go 11-2 and lose to the 2 teams you hate the most is quite deflating, But they've also had a pair of 9-win seasons. Mm-hmm. And the one thing about Minnesota, going back since 1905, they've had 2 seasons of double-digit victories. Once with Glenn Mason and 03 or 04, and then 19 under Fleck, they had 11 wins, which is, basically a record until going back 105-10 years, whatever.
Some good receivers.
Yeah.
18 team.
There's Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson, and Tanner Morgan looked pretty good that year and stuff. But then there are the stories that, on this, like Floyd, we all know. He took it home. He took Floyd home last year after they won, just like he did the Axe. Well, he said where he lives in his cul-de-sac neighborhood in the southwest suburbs, which that one of his neighbors flies the Iowa flag high and proud every day. And so he's like, I had to see that flag all the time. So he made sure that his neighbor, with his Ring camera, could see Floyd driving by, just stuff like that. That was pretty funny. And then, of course, the Axe, he said that the Axe slept with him and Heather, his wife.
The Axe slept with him? Okay.
Yeah. And he said that in a podcast. And I'm like, okay, tell me, and he's like, he goes, oh, I think that was a little overblown. He goes, no, we didn't sleep with it. But he goes, it was in the room.
Oh my God. That's yeah.
So he is very eccentric, and it's funny, and it's
I get it.
And things like, in 18 he gave every single player a bottle of Axe body spray. And when he's like, we're gonna have an Axe spray party at Camp Randall Stadium. And then they went in and they beat them for the first time in 14 years. And then everybody sprayed it. And I know, talking to one of the players before about that, he's like, they about all had asthma attacks because it was just such a thick fog. And of course, last year it was cigar smoke. And he just said, smoke them if you got them.
Yeah. Well, that's everyone should go check out Scott's work on that at the Athletic, and obviously tune in tonight against North Carolina. What a game that's going to be. I'm interested to see their transfer quarterback from New Hampshire. He kind of sounds like a Tyson Bagent there, Scott.
Yeah.
From a lower level coming up to the big time here. And for Bears fans know who I'm talking about.
Right.
Or Shepherd College fans. But anyway, what do you expect tonight in that game?
I mean, it's really close.
Yeah,
I'm covering it. North Carolina is a 1.5 point favorite, and they've got Max Johnson, who was at LSU and A&M and transferred in, and to replace Drake May. So they've got some players. Omar Hampton is as good of any running back in the country that North Carolina has. But I also think Minnesota has some players too. Daniel Jackson is one of the better receivers we've ever. He had a great game against Iowa. He's one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. Darius Taylor, the running back, he was hurt a lot last year, but he's terrific. And Brosmer is really interesting because when he was at New Hampshire, he was a finalist for the Walter Payton Award. He was an AFCA first team All-American quarterback. 29 touchdowns. So, he's fitting into a new system, a new, team. And, they've got a lot of pieces. I think this is one of those games, and I think Iowa State next week is in the same boat, where it's really important for the leagues as much as it is for the teams, because a game like this, a game like Iowa State, it helps establish some sort of separation among the leagues. I mean, if the number 6 team in the ACC goes and loses at the number 10 team in the Big 12 in the opener, that hurts the ACC, and then likewise it may hurt, an Iowa if they go 4-8 and they lose to North Carolina. If Minnesota loses North Carolina, it may hurt Iowa down the road. I mean, just strength of schedule and how it stacks up. So I think that's really impactful tonight, and it's supposed to rain pretty hard, so I'm not real thrilled about driving there. But
better get going. Row the boat to the stadium.
I'll just have DJ pick me up on.
Yeah, there you go.
or
Southwest suburbs. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or from the Vikings stadium.
Oh my God! Please, this is we don't like to talk about other NFC North teams. No. Rest of the Big Ten slate isn't bad. I'm actually just kind of curious. Friday, there's a couple games Friday night that are interesting to me. Not in terms of like being close, but we'll get eyes on Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This team, year 2 of Luke Fickell, they play Western Michigan at 8:00. By the way, the Minnesota game is on Fox, Big Fox, if you're tuning in tonight. That Wisconsin game, 8:00 on FS1, and Michigan State plays FAU, Scott, at 6 on BTN. Doesn't Iowa have FAU on the schedule next year? I think, am I right on that?
I think you are right. Now that you bring it up.
I'll look it up while we're talking. But
but
the most intriguing game for the weekend, other than what we cover, Iowa, is for me is Penn State at West Virginia. That's the big noon game on Fox. I mean, as far as Big Ten,
I would say Sundays is up there too. USC versus LSU.
Oh yeah. Well, I forgot they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 6:30 on ABC. It looks like Sunday night. So
but I agree with you about Penn State. West Virginia is I mean, there used to be sort of a rivalry. It was a hammer versus nail rivalry, but Penn State going to Morgantown, it's got the same type of scenario as we're saying. 2 different conferences. It can kind of play out that way. Big noon kickoffs there. Penn State's 8.5 point favorite. You expect Penn State to win, but West Virginia is a pretty good team. So I think they won 9 games last year. So this could be it wouldn't surprise me at all if this is a closer game than we expect, maybe within that 8.5 margin.
Yeah. Tougher. It's a tough road venue. West Virginia is not an easy place to play. And Big 10, Big 12. And then I didn't actually forget USC. It was in the Big 10, but hadn't looked at the Sunday slate. But that's a good one. USC at LSU, 4.5 point favorite. For the Tigers, go Tigers, Geaux, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to finish up until we talked about the Connor Stallions documentary, Scott. I actually watched it Wednesday. I know you had watched it Tuesday. A lot was made, including by me, of the clip of Connor Stallions, taking the game ball, getting the game ball for beating Iowa back in 2022 in Kinnick Stadium, in which Michigan happened to score on 4 of its first 5 possessions. Obviously, offensive and defensive signals are, part of being stolen, or at least deciphered, right? Deciphered. So I don't know. After I watched it, I was like sort of underwhelmed by it, I guess, a little bit. I felt like it was, I don't know, like, and I know it tried to make him look like a victim or look better, like, hey,
Yeah.
he's just doing what everyone else is doing type thing. But I mean, I actually think the opposite. I thought it looked like he was hiding stuff, like he was like, that, basically wasn't him at the Central Michigan game. And
Yeah.
like, that doesn't even look like me, like
Yeah.
what? And then telling the NCAA he didn't, didn't know who attended the games and got the videos. And, it's just like a Christmas present. Like I wasn't really looking at the videos they sent to me. Like I already knew all the signal. I don't know. Just it didn't sound truthful to me. So I thought it was, I don't know, a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I thought they tried to portray him as the victim, which is probably why he and his parents spoke on camera about it, because they wanted to put him in a good light. And I felt exactly the opposite as you did. I thought that it made him, instead of look like the victim, it made him look like kind of like a fool, and a patsy at best, and and dishonest. And as you said, there was that was something that we'd all known and heard about. And it was the pink locker room. He got a game ball, and of course Jim Harbaugh said, "I don't even know who he is," and all this. Come on, that's the stuff that's why I wrote this story today, and I talked to several assistants throughout the Big Ten and both of the divisions about what they think of this, and I wrote about it, and that's why people are still pissed off, because you can, in the NFL and in high school football, you can scout that way. You just can't take the video. But in college, you're not supposed to. That is a rule. It's a bylaw. And they did it. And then they took video of it. And then you have a savant like Connor Stallions who's able to put it all together. And then he's standing by the coordinators. I talked to one coordinator from a team, not Iowa for sure, who was like, when I'm calling plays, I don't want anybody around me unless they have something important to say. And instead, you got Connor Stallion standing next to him. That there's something going on. And Iowa was victimized heavily twice in the 2021 championship game and that 2022 game. And I pointed out that in 2022, Chad, that Michigan had lost its last 4 at Kinnick, 5 out of the last 6. The only win was in overtime. And Harbaugh had never won there. And the way the game was going, Michigan was the better team. But that was always one of those rock'em sock'em Iowa beats a top 5 team. They won again, their last 5 out of the last 6, I should say, at home against top 5 competition. That was always one of those games that you felt like, okay, and Michigan was able to decipher, and then of course I've heard it from everybody, as you have too. I'm sure it's like, oh, well, it's not that hard to figure out Iowa's offense. Everybody can figure that out. Well, okay, but still, they figured it out, and they figured it out in a way and that's why everybody in the Big Ten would love to just see everybody beat the daylights out of them.
Yeah, and I think people knew that this was going on in 21. And I think, it's just, I don't know. It must be hard to change signals like on the fly, like to 105 guys, I suppose. But it's good. We should say helmet communication now does take away all that stuff. So that's a big development in this game, or this year's season. This Tim Lester offense that we're going to be seeing on Saturday. I guess that brings it full circle, doesn't it? Back to Tim Lester.
Yeah.
I mean, the headset communication, how it works is it's like the NFL. You can hear the guy you can hear the person in your head until 15 seconds on a play clock, or until the ball snaps. So, and same for defense. So, I don't know. I'm actually like, this wasn't on our list to talk about, but I'm actually curious if that could maybe hurt Iowa's defense a little bit. Like Iowa's defense is so good at understanding what's coming type of thing. And so they get set. But if other teams are, I want to ask you this because I really don't know. If other teams are getting to the line of scrimmage, let's say with 25 on the play clock, getting in their formation, and then Iowa adjusts like it always does, can the offensive coordinator can still talk to him and change the play, right?
Well, if up until the ball's down,
up until
15
15
and the ball's down.
So,
but on defense, the one challenge is they are still going to have to use, hand signals because of what you said. I mean, because there's going to be up tempo. You're not going to be able to, if you're Jay Higgins, you're not going to be able to decipher it all, put everybody in position that somebody's going to have to look over for coverage. And so you're still going to have those signals, and you're just going to have to figure out who's going to be the one signaling in the plays. There's probably going to be dummies, signaling in plays, but everybody knows who the dummies are. I mean, they could figure that out pretty quick. But then again, Iowa only has a couple of coverages anyway, so it doesn't matter, But truthfully, it's going to impact the defense more than the offense. The offense will, be able to hear it just like with the NFL. You won't have to signal and stuff,
right?
But with the defense, they'll still have to signal.
Yeah, I'm curious how that all unfolds. Anyway, closing the chapter on the Stallions thing, I don't know. It is a little unsettling, obviously. Would they lose 3 games in the Stallions era?
1 in the Big Ten and 2 in the playoffs.
Yeah. Over 3 years. So
yeah, Cade McNamara lost 2 of them.
Yeah, right. That's right. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. He didn't talk about, he wasn't there much on Tuesday.
No, he was only there 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And 4 minutes and 20 seconds. So, he smoked on out of there. But, there was, that was frustrating because I did want to ask him about that. And I know he took his time to get there. And then, oh, by the way, I have a class at 11. So I don't think he wanted to talk to us very, very much either.
No.
So.
Well, we'll see how he plays on Saturday, and usually the quarterback talks after the game. So I guess we'll talk to him then, assuming he's the quarterback when the game ends.
Yeah, we don't know about that.
He should. If he's not, it probably went badly for the Hawks. So
yeah,
I think you all hope that the Cade McNamara has a good game. The Hawkeyes have a successful one, and we're talking next week about the Cy-Hawk game, Scott. With both teams 1-0 and probably both riding high, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to go to Ames on Tuesday and talk to players and get some water and bring it back. Love the water in Ames. So no, it's a big game, and this year the ramifications are massive. I think both teams might end up ranked at that point if all goes well in the opener and on CBS. So
yeah,
maybe first time CBS is broadcasted in Iowa City since 86 or 85. I'd have to look and see.
Wow. I think it's 86. Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, great show, man. Enjoy Minneapolis, and I'll see you Saturday.
It sounds great. Can't wait.
All right. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. We'll be back with you next Thursday morning here on Legends and Listeners, as always, from the Channel Seed Studios and only on the Iowa Everywhere Network.